Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Girls, the women racing to win. We got a very exciting show today. Joe Samriego here, along with Daniel from Racers, the girls behind the helmet. We're going to be recapping this past race weekend for all the women racing around the world, preview the upcoming race weekend. But first, we're going to start out with some big developing news about the W Series that came out this morning. I know, very exciting to see this news come out this morning. Great wake up surprise, especially out here in Oregon, the West Coast. This morning it was announced the W Series will be featured as a support series race for Formula One 8 times in 2021. Of course, this is following the news that Formula 2 and Formula 3 are going to be splitting weekends. And now we know that the W Series will be part of Formula One weekends 8 times next year in 2021. Daniel, how exciting is this to see the W Series going to be participating at the same tracks, the same weekend as Formula One?
Well, it's absolutely exciting because for such a young championship to be featuring alongside Formula One straight into their second year, because 2021 will be actually their second year after they took a stop year in 2020. Of course, for the logistic nightmare that 2020 would have posed for them. So to be on Formula One schedule, it's massive for them. It's a massive achievement. I know that Catherine Bonnier, the series CEO, wanted to extend their partnership because previous to that, they were set to do 2 rounds together with Formula One in Austin in Texas and one in Mexico for the 2 American Grand Prix, for the US Grand Prix and the Mexican Grand Prix. So she definitely wanted to extend more the championship out of Europe. She also had her eyes set on Asia and possibly Australia. So definitely the Formula One partnership is something that allows them to go outside of Europe. And to do that in the second year is again, as I said, it's massive because the visibility that all the girls will have, it's going to be something that they didn't expect with such a young championship.
Indeed, such a young championship. The W Series, of course, as you mentioned, this would have been their second year running. Of course, with everything that's going on with the pandemic, they decided we're going to take the year off, but we're going to focus on making 2021 a bigger and better year. And this is just really huge, especially Formula One, the pinnacle of motorsports. A lot of times for all the tracks they visit, this is when they bring the biggest crowds. I know for races such as Spa, Belgium, Circuits of America, it is, of course, the largest crowd that they bring to the racetracks. So to have the W Series there, especially, I would see this as a huge win, especially, as you mentioned, United States, Mexico. We knew they were planning to come out to be part of the Formula One Series. If there's a young girl out there who's just coming out because their family wants to see the race, and then to see these women out there racing, it's going to be a big win. And we definitely encourage all our viewers, if you're watching on YouTube, Periscope, or Facebook, participate in the chat room. We'd love to see your thoughts. Share your excitement about the W Series being with Formula One next year, and ask your questions. We'll try our best to answer them during the program. Now, of course, with the W Series 2020, no season this year, it really put everything in 2021. And we're seeing that really pay off now with this announcement about them joining Formula One 8 times next year. We know they've been looking at races, especially in the United States, at Circuits of America in Austin, Texas, as well as the potential season finale in Mexico City, which is a big racetrack that hosts Formula One and even has hosted NASCAR in the past. As it appeared that this year, the management at the W Series have really taken advantage of the pandemic, and rather than trying to piece together a 2020 season, focus to make 2021 a bigger and better year for the series.
Yeah, I think Catherine was pretty focused on 2021 as soon as it was clear that they couldn't do it for 2020. It's with such a young series, it would have been very risky to try to put together a 2020 calendar. And with all the risk connected of possible race cancellations, So far, W Series is still in its very early stages, and it was funded all by the creators so far. So they're still in that phase where they're not monetizing yet with the TV rights. So definitely would have been very risky to try to scrap together a calendar and then having the rounds cancelled. I think that would have been not sustainable financially for the US Series organization. So definitely was the right choice for them. They were a little bit late on their esports series, but it worked very well. It was a very cool esports championship with all the real participants. So definitely they had still something going on in 2020 for the fans, for the drivers. Of course, some of the drivers managed to put together deals to race in other series, like the champion Jamie Chadwick, who is racing in Formula Regional European Championship, and other racers that have been trying to race in other series this year, not to have a full year out of the race car. But yeah, focusing on 2021 was definitely the right choice. We've seen early on, Catherine said that she was focusing on a bigger and better 2021, and it looks like they delivered.
It does appear like they deliver on a big 2021, and I would agree with you. Essentially, for such a young series to have this challenge, try to piece together a 2020 series in which you have race days changing, cancellations, potential of drivers missing races if they were to get sick, could have been really costly, not that productive to help the series grow. To put essentially all the eggs in the basket for 2021, it looked like it is really starting to pay dividends. It's really exciting to see on social media so many people excited about this news of the W Series with Formula One. I know a lot of fans that I'm starting to see that haven't been following W Series, but been starting to hear about it, get exposed. They were excited to see, oh, I'm going to be at the United States Grand Prix. I hope the W Series is there. That was really exciting to see, and I think it's a big win. Now, as you mentioned, a lot of the drivers that would have been in the W Series this year are still racing. Jamie Chadwick, for example, Formula Regionals. We see other drivers racing around the world. And one of the interesting quotes from the CEO of the W Series, Catherine, she said, "We also wanted to become a crucial default option, stepping stone for any female racing driver who wants to carve out a professional racing career, and our proximity to Formula One will help and enhance that process." Does this move set up W Series as the premier series for any female racer wanting to race professionally to come to the W Series, compete, and get recognized?
Well, yeah, definitely. It is something that has been debated a lot last year. W Series has the long-term target of bringing a female driver to Formula One. I'd say that is the long-term goal. But also we've seen some drivers that maybe they will not make it to Formula One, but even if they can make it to big championships like I don't know, maybe World Endurance Championship or IndyCar, I mean that would be another big win for W Series. And there's not always only Formula One, also Formula E, or there's never been so many high quality options like today, I think. But yeah, having of course the races together with Formula One is going to be a massive achievement for them in terms of visibility. Last year with DTM, I think it was a very good option for them as a starting year, as a startup. DTM has a huge following in Europe, especially in Central Europe. I would say that, for example, at the season finale in Brands Hatch, where I was there, we know that the attendance, the weekend attendance doubled up based on the previous year when only DTM was running. So definitely there was some interest in W Series when a lot of people came to the races in Brands Hatch, not only for DTM but also for W Series, and that from a support series, it's huge. especially in the UK, where the W Series was one of the only country that featured W Series in free-to-air TV. So that's also very important. And I think this is actually one of the most important features of this Formula One deal, because as they are on the support bill of Formula One, they will also have the races broadcasted through the TV that the broadcasters that have Formula One rights. So that's the massive achievement for W Series, because we've seen that last year, especially in the US, for example, there were two American drivers, Sabre Cook and Shea Holbrook. And the coverage in the US was not that great, because, of course, it was still a very young series. It was developing. Every country had deals as the series progressed, because, of course, after the couple of races, there was not many TVs that were they were ready to invest in a series, in a product like W Series. Women's sports was growing, but still not every broadcaster was ready to invest in that. So definitely, I think having Formula One behind their backs, it's going to be the most important thing in TV rights on that side as well.
Very important, the television rights. I know it's going to be really exciting here in the United States. ESPN has Formula One, potentially to see W Series on ESPN, probably ESPN2. It will still be huge. I know last year it was challenging trying to catch the W Series races here in the United States. So this is going to be really huge to have the W Series be there. And then, of course, as well, to expand their audience. That's really amazing how last year the crowd doubled with the addition of the W Series to be part of a well-known European series, DTM last year. Now to be associated with such a global series that has a following here in the United States as well, Formula One. I think that's just going to be a huge win. And you bring up a really good point. Drivers come to the W Series. If they don't make it to Formula One, they now have the attention of IndyCar teams, sports car teams, especially in the United States, IMSA teams. We've seen drivers like Tatiana Calderon come to IMSA due to 24 Hours of Daytona. Even in the United States, NASCAR has a Drive for Diversity program that is very much more specific on the ovals. Now that we know NASCAR is going to have more road courses, still the W Series, I think, really is set up to where if you're an aspiring driver, you want to work hard, get to the W Series. W Series is your golden opportunity to go to either Formula One, IndyCar, NASCAR, or any series around the world, because they're going to be watching. They're going to be scouting the talent. And I think this is just huge that the W Series, at such a young age, 2 years, second season 2021, could accomplish this goal. I think that's wonderful. That's going to really help women drivers around the world get recognized and earn opportunities to race around the world. It's on the best series across the globe. This is definitely a story we're going to be following throughout the week and the months ahead. So definitely encourage all our viewers, be sure to follow Racers, the girls behind the helmet. And then, of course, subscribe to Grid Network, where every Thursday we're on the air here with Grid Girls. Now back to some of our regular scheduled program, including Spanish Formula 4 race weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Last weekend in the Spanish Formula 4 was back after just 1 week after the Aragon round. They were racing in the Jarama racetrack, which is just outside Madrid. And Léna Bühler was racing there in Spanish Formula 4. Léna has had a pretty interesting first year in race cars, I would say. She's coming from karting. She just made the jump to Formula 4 this year. I think she is one of the most interesting female drivers to look out for. Still, her first season in the Spanish Formula 4, she hasn't been quite there where she wanted to be. I think she has the pace to be in P5 and P6 or every time around those positions. Still, she had a couple of issues too much and a couple of incidents throughout the season. But Aragon, she had her first top 5. We spoke about her in the previous episode last Thursday. So coming from her first top 5, she was definitely very optimistic for coming in the final 2 rounds of the season in Jarama and Barcelona. And definitely she was again fast in Jarama in the free practice on Friday. The weekend was contested in Friday and Saturday, and there was no races on Sunday. On Friday she was very fast. She was P5 in free practice, so definitely very encouraging for the qualifying session. And in the first quali, she had her best session in the season so far. She was second. So definitely a huge performance for Swiss driver Léna Bühler. Finishing P2, she also had the second fastest lap from the session. So she was set to start from the front row of the grid for both the first and the second races on Saturday. So definitely a big improvement from her. In the second quali, she had another P4, so the second row of the grid for the third and final race of the weekend in Jarama, which proved again that she was really fast in that track. Unfortunately, her best day of the year on Friday was not followed by a good Saturday, I would say, because on the first race, first of all, the drivers found very difficult and very different weather conditions from the day before when they came into the race day at Jarama. It had rained overnight. The track was very damp and it was hardly drying up. So definitely more tricky conditions for all the drivers of the Spanish Formula 4 and the TCR Europe Championship, because they were racing together. And Léna had a very difficult start. She dropped a couple of positions straight at the start. I think her car was not set up perfectly for the damp conditions. She struggled for grip, and also she struggled a little bit for top speed on the main straight, where she was passed in a couple of laps by 2 or 3 drivers. So definitely she dropped back a little bit, was struggling to keep the car on track, and ultimately she went off into the gravel. She later told us that she had a throttle problem. Her throttle pedal was getting stuck. So definitely a very tricky situation and also potentially dangerous. And her race ended in the gravel. Her first race ended in the gravel. It was very unlucky development after such a competitive qualifying for her. But the day went from bad to worse when in race 2, she went out on the pits as soon as the pit opened to line up on the grid, and in her lineup lap she spun and she went off, reportedly again for the same throttle issue, and she couldn't even take the start of race 2. So definitely a very, very challenging day for her, and it was more nightmarish after race 3, because she started from P4, as we said. She dropped back a couple of positions again. She was struggling again because there was more rain between one race and the other, so the track didn't dry up at all. The MP Motorsport drivers were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they locked up all the top 6 positions, proving that they had way better. They had found probably the best setup for those conditions, and all the other teams were struggling a little bit more. Léna she kind of settled into P5, so still a pretty decent race from her. But again, she went off as she was fighting with another driver at turn 1, put a couple of the wheels off the track, dropped it back to P12. And then after that, there was a very incident-filled race. There were safety cars. After a safety car restart, she went off into the gravel. She said it was her mistake this time. And that was it from her weekend. Very, very unfortunate. 3 DNF from her after such a competitive qualifying, which is still very, very disappointing. But coming to the final weekend of the season, this weekend, they are racing in Barcelona, starting from tomorrow. It's encouraging because again she proved that she has pace. She can be up there. She just have to find some consistency and to finish the races. But that's I think a matter of next year, when she probably on a second season with more experience of the track, of the car, she can probably hopefully be a title contender.
Definitely, hopefully be a title contender. I know it's really tricky, the wet conditions that they had there. And of course, you mentioned TCR Europe was there too, dealing with the wet conditions. And certainly one of the big challenges, of course, was for Jessica Bäckman and Michelle Halder, both of them competing in TCR Europe. For Jessica, overall had a really good build-up to the race. 6th and 7th in the 2 practice sessions, and then qualifying Q1, 5th. She advanced into Q2 and was 9th, which would have put her in the place for race 2, up towards the front, since for race 2, the top 10 is essentially reversed. So definitely, 9th place in the first race, 2nd place in race 2 would have been a really great start, especially for Jess. Overall, she had the pace to be up front. The question was, how would that all turn out? And when it was all said, it was going to be essentially something for everyone to watch. Meanwhile, Michelle Halder was struggling with pace a bit. The circuit, as she didn't know really before much, and was almost the whole weekend around P19, P20. She qualified 19th on Saturday morning race day. The drivers found completely different weather conditions compared to the day before. This is where, as you had mentioned, the rain. It had rained overnight. The track was very damp. It never really dried up. And this just makes it really hard for the drivers to decide what kind of tires do they want to go with. Do they want to try to go with intermediates? If there's a bit of a dry groove, go on slicks. It just made it really challenging. And we saw that right away on lap 1 of the first race. A very chaotic start. Many vehicles were going off. This is a very old track as well. As you mentioned, there's a lot of gravel, not a whole lot of runoff areas for the drivers to regain control of the car and continue on racing. So for Michelle, she went into the gravel at turn 1 to avoid some spinning vehicles, dropped way back to last place, fell back. Jessica went off in the grass and crashed heavily with another driver, pretty much was out of contention for the rest of the race. For Michelle, she was 17th, finished ahead of a couple of drivers that received penalties during the race. That bad luck, though, unfortunately continued as we saw in race 2. Jessica's car was so badly damaged that the team essentially had to work hard overnight to try to get this ready for Saturday's race. But she wasn't able to make it to the grid on time, had to start from pit lane. 2 laps behind, her race was completely compromised. No real chance of essentially winning the race, but going out there trying to gain valuable experience. For Michelle Halder, she unfortunately crashed in the race as well, and the title for the TCR year went to Moroccan motorsports legend Michelle Benani. Overall, the weekend for Jessica 2020, she had the pace this year. We know she has a fast car, a fast overall team, and she has a talent. But just this year, and sometimes this seems to happen, a lot of times in the United States, we call this the sophomore jinx, where that first year you do pretty good, that the second year, it just doesn't seem to go your way. Bad luck. For Michelle, rookie season this year has to be pretty positive, of course, with the victory earlier this year. Many times in the points, scoring top 10 finishes as well. Very promising for next year as well. They have a lot more knowledge of the circuits next year. One of the big things as well, Michelle won the Lady of the Year award in TCR Europe. So definitely overall, it wasn't the best weekend for both racers, but definitely when it comes to 2021, something for them to really take all the notes from 2020, learn from the experience, and now come back 2021 stronger, ready to compete more. And I anticipate we'll probably see both of them competing for wins next season. Now, of course, we have some more racing up ahead with ADAC GT Masters.
Yeah, the ADAC GT Masters, which is the premier GT3 championship in Germany, had its final race of the weekend in Oschersleben last weekend. of course, which was just one weekend after their Lausitzring race. So a back-to-back also for the ADAC GT Masters. After the DTM also had an announcement earlier this weekend, where they will also be featuring GT3 cars for next year. So definitely there's going to be interesting to see the DTM and the ADAC GT Masters, both very important GT3 championship in Germany. But on the ADAC GT Masters grids, there were 3 female racers back again after they all missed the Lausitzring race. Simona De Silvestro, of course, very famous Swiss racer who also competed in IndyCar and Australian supercars, has huge experience. Then Kerry Schreiner, very young German racer. Last week she missed the Lausitzring race because she said that she had a bad cold. So definitely in this time of the year and this situation, she didn't want to travel and to put potentially other team members in a dangerous situation. But she was back at the Oschersleben to round out her season together with her co-driver and teammate Dennis Marshall in the Audi R8 LMS GT3. And also racing on the same car, but not physically on the same car, on the similar car. There was Rahel Frey, also a Audi Works driver. Rahel, of course, she's another very experienced and famous GT racer. She also was racing in the ELMS, in the European Le Mans Series, and she did Le Mans. Very fast driver. But this year in the German ADAC GT Masters, she had a very difficult season in a not so competitive team with a very unexperienced teammate. Quite a strange season from her. No points scored. Let's see if she will be back next year, because from what we understand, she will be back in the ELMS with the Iron Dames. And again, she had a very difficult final round of the championship at Oschersleben. In the first race, they were out, and in the second, they were always back on the grid. So another no points scored for them. Kerry Schreiner was also struggling a little bit in Oschersleben. She was out, but was classified in P19, in the first race, and then again was in P17 in the second race. The second race, there was a huge crash on the main straight, quite similar to what the Formula One had in Mugello after the safety car restart. The ADAC GT Masters have rolling starts, not standing starts. So someone in the midfield, they jumped the start, and then when all the cars were still bunching up the field, when someone was going, someone else was not. There was a huge crash on Main Straight, cars all over the straight, cars into the inside walls, some other in the grass. The title contenders, Patrick Niederhauser, Kelvin van der Linde, were out straight away. So the title went to Porsche with Michael Ammermüller, another very experienced driver. And Simona De Silvestro, who had a pretty good race in race 1 on Saturday. She was P8, sorry, she was starting P9, and she made up 1 position in the race. She was P8 on Saturday, and on Sunday, unfortunately, she was caught up in that first lap incident, and she was out straight away. While the other 2 female racers, they had quite a difficult Saturday. They were starting from the back of the grid on Sunday. They did make it through the first lap, but then again, they didn't have a lot of chances to recover during the second race, and they finished the P17 and P19. So definitely another difficult weekend for them. It wasn't, let's say, it wasn't a very positive weekend for women in motorsport last week. Quite difficult, quite challenging races for them. But again, Simona, we can say that Simona De Silvestro had a pretty Encouraging first season in the ADAC GT Masters, which is one of the very, very top elite GT3 championship around Europe. So we can say she didn't have a podium to her name, unfortunately. They were pretty close together with their teammate Klaus Bachler. They were pretty close. Definitely, she could have had more top 5. But still, as a first year in as a Porsche works driver for Simona in such a very competitive championship with super high quality competition with basically all works driver from the major manufacturer in Europe, we can say that she had pretty decent race finishes, and she was close to the podium finishes most of the times. Consistently in the points, so definitely an encouraging first year for her. Hopefully we will see her again back into that championship next year. And for Kerry, it was a pretty okay second season. It was her second season in the ADAC GT Masters. Last year she had a podium in Hockenheim. This year she was not quite there, but they still finished together with Dennis Marshall. It's a very young duo for Rutronic Racing in the Audi. And so definitely they finished P3 in the junior class. That's the championship they classified that they were looking at the eve of this final round of the season. So they defended the P3 in the junior class, despite not having their best weekend at Oschersleben. But that was still a pretty encouraging result for her.
Yeah, challenging weekend all around, it seemed, for so many women, but that's just part of racing too. We know, thankfully, we had a lot of great weekends where we saw racers going out there, getting the wins, making the case that they are just as good, if not better, than some of their male counterparts to go out there and race for the win. Now, of course, one of the big stories as well this past weekend was over in Great Britain with the British GT Series at Silverstone. Essentially, we had over there Mia Fluid, a 50-year-old Swedish driver that had a stellar season in GT4 Pro-Am class. Together, she, along with her teammate Ewan Hockey, had won class races prior to the season finale, or coming up this weekend, with the Baffle Motorsports McLaren. They also have an overall win this year as well, so that was a really big, essentially big moment for Mia this season. And overall, it was the first laps of the Silverstone, as we've been talking about a lot, super messy, and unfortunately quite a lot of crashes, put several cars out early on in the race. And unfortunately, Mia and her McLaren were involved in one of the incidents that occurred on that first lap, and they were just out shortly after the start of the race. Very unfortunate. However, with everything that had occurred this season, Mia sealed the GT4 Pro-Am victory earlier this year. So what that only means is essentially they had a perfect score pretty much all year long, but really just this one race is where they missed out on such a perfect season. So I definitely know it was not the ideal way to end the season for Mia. Of course, any racer wants to go out there, get a win, compete for the wins as well. And especially when you go out early on in a race, it's just really tough, heartbreaking. But definitely Mia has a lot to be proud of this season, all the accomplishments they have achieved this year, and definitely we're looking forward to her next year. We're also looking forward to next weekend. What's going to be coming up this upcoming race weekend?
Absolutely. There's a lot of very interesting races coming up this weekend. Let's start from round 4 of the Super Formula Championship, which is the top, one of the top Formula series in the world. The premier, of course, Japanese championship. They are racing at Autopolis. Finally, Tatiana Calderon has made it to Japan. Of course, she had to miss the previous 2 rounds because of the travel restrictions from Europe to Japan. She has traveled last week, and she completed the quarantine period. So definitely, she will be able to race at Autopolis in the Super Formula. We'll definitely keep an eye out on her. After she did the first race in that championship, she was P12, which was pretty impressive debut for Tatiana in Superform, such a high quality championship. So definitely very interesting to see Tatiana racing this weekend. Then also at Brands Hatch, there will be a pretty big weekend together with BTCC, the British Touring Car Championship. There's also racing the Porsche Carrera Cup UK, where Esme Oki also had a very, very good season this year. Esme Oki, of course, a former W Series driver. She had a very, very competitive season in the Porsche Carrera Cup, won a lot of races, scored a lot of pole positions. So definitely she missed the opportunity to clinch her title last time out, but definitely in Brands Hatch, which is her home track. Basically, she lives very nearby the track. Last year in the W Series, she had her best weekend of the year in Brands Hatch, where she qualified P3 in such a high quality grid. So definitely, I think we're going to see a very good weekend from Esme, trying to finally seal the title in the Porsche Carrera Cup UK, but also racing in Brands Hatch. There is the British Formula 4 Championship, where Abby Pulling and Rima Jafali are racing there. Abby, of course, we covered her races in the past, and also 2 weeks ago, where she was racing in Imola together with Formula 1, as she made her debut on Formula 3 machinery, basically, because she was racing in the Formula Renault Euro Cup Championship, which of course employs the Tatu's Formula 3 car, who is also raced in W Series. So definitely it's going to be interesting to see when Abby will try to make the switch to W Series, if the all-female championship will open up again the selection process. Abby have a couple of podiums to her name this year in her debut season in Formula 4. Very, very competitive season for Abby. Victory doesn't feel so far away for her. Hopefully, fingers crossed, she will make it in the final round of the week of the season, and what will be the final round of race car debut. Rima Jafali also, of course, as we mentioned, the young Saudi driver will be there. It's her second season in the British Formula 4 Championship. She had a pretty good weekend last time out in Formula 4. She had her best weekend of the season with a P8, which was also her best finish in the British Formula 4. Not on Formula 4 overall, because in the Emirati-based championship, I think she also had better positions, better finishes. But in the British Formula 4 last time out, she had a pretty decent weekend. Rima was also she's from Saudi Arabia. Definitely, she will be over the moon after the news that Formula 1 will be traveling to her home country next year. And of course, also this weekend we will have the Spanish Formula 4. We mentioned before with Léna, when we spoke about Léna Bühler's weekend in Jarama. They will round out their 2020 season in Barcelona, of course, in the Catalan Circuito de Catalunya, home of the Spanish Formula 1 Grand Prix. Definitely, it's going to be interesting to see Léna racing there. I think she tested there in a couple of pre-season tests. And also another series that is really growing in popularity in Europe is Euro NASCAR. The NASCAR division in Europe had only one race this year so far because of all cancellations, all the travel restrictions. They had quite a troubled season so far. They had their first race in Vallelunga, outside of Rome in Italy. They were set to race in Czech Republic in Most for their second race weekend of the season. The race was cancelled a couple of weeks ago, so they had to scrap together another race. Ultimately, they could do that, and they will be racing in Croatia at Autodrom Grobnik, which is not a super known track, let's say. But it's definitely a very interesting track. It's quite fast, quite tight, but fast, very old style track, not a lot of runoff. Very interesting to see the big NASCAR cars racing there. Of course, we have Julia Landauer, the American driver, racing there. She's pretty interesting. I think she was also said to be one of the she was said to be one of the title contenders in the Euro NASCAR second division, where also Italian driver Arianna Casoli is racing there. Arianna is a very experienced driver, one of the fun favorites, always very friendly around the paddock, one of the most colorful and friendly drivers in the championship. Of course, with the restrictions, no public allowed in this championship, it's going to be a troubled season for Euro NASCAR, which was it was a strong point of this championship, their involvement of the audience, but still it's important that they can continue their championship, and we will see Arianna and Julia back on track this weekend. And Joe, there's also going to be a couple of very important races in stateside from the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge at Sebring.
Yeah, definitely. Sebring, of course, is a big weekend for a lot of sports car fans here in the United States. I know one of our correspondents, Kobe Lambeth, he'll be following that race, covering it all weekend long. So definitely it's a big weekend for sports car, and definitely for some of the women racing there, including especially Sheena Monk. She'll be racing this weekend at Sebring. That is going to be really huge for her. Of course, she has been racing pretty much all year long, looking to get improving finishes week after week. She is definitely going to be there, as well as Taylor Hagler. She's going to be running as well. Of course, Taylor ran this past race weekend at Laguna Seca. Of course, Laguna Seca, very popular for the corkscrew. What makes Sebring really different compared to every other track in the United States, like Laguna Seca, Road America? Those places are permanent road courses. Sebring, it is a road course race, but it is old airfield, so it's very wide, the old runways that used to host airplanes. Very bumpy. You could just see on any onboard lap from a sports car around Sebring, it is just brutal on the car. So it's going to be a real test for these drivers, taking care of that car, taking care of the equipment, the reliability. It's going to be a huge challenge for anyone racing there this weekend. And of course, the big name that a lot of NASCAR fans are going to be following in Sebring, of course, Hailie Deegan. Hailie Deegan, of course, racing with Ford. They got a big entry as well for the Sebring race. And one of the big things, of course, the 12-hour race in Sebring is going to be really huge for her. Essentially, one of the big things, of course, going to NASCAR, it was announced today that NASCAR will be introducing the Truck Series schedule either next week or 2 weeks from now. A lot of anticipation, there'll be more road courses. What does that mean for Hailie Deegan? If she does more road courses, and there's some of those road courses on the Truck Series calendars, she's going to have an experience, get a leg up. And one of the big things, especially here in the United States with the top 3 NASCAR series, you win one race, you are in the series playoffs. I know compared that to other motorsport series where points earns you championship contention. In the United States, especially in the NASCAR series, if you win one race, you are entered into a playoff format in which there's elimination rounds. And just like we saw this last race weekend, you had 4 drivers in the Truck Series in the last race competing for the championship. The first one to cross the finish line at the end of the last lap wins the championship. So for Hailie Deegan, if she could get one win before the playoffs, she's in the playoffs. If she could do some good races in the playoffs, she could be competing for a championship in her rookie year. It's very different than other racing series around the world and outside of NASCAR in the United States. But definitely this is a big move for her to try to gain the experience. And of course, with that experience, bring that to the NASCAR series. And of course, last but not least, the 24-hour series by Quebec. Essentially, we're seeing that there's a lot of trouble going on with that, but it looks like they're got a race at Magellan will finally get underway. The Gosner sisters will be there competing there in the Mercedes AMG G30. Manuela usually races in ELMS, while Karina races in the Ferrari Challenge. Previously, they have been both racing in Mercedes. Monza earlier this year, also they feel a Jasmine racing in the Volkswagen Golf in TCR. So a lot of racing going on this upcoming race weekend. And we definitely encourage all our viewers, be sure to visit Racers, the girls behind the helmet, on their website, a full calendar of all the women racing around the world each and every weekend. I know Daniel, Vivian, everyone at the Racers website do a lot of work, great photos. Be sure to follow their Facebook, Twitter as well. They put out great work to follow all the women racing around the world. Be sure to subscribe to the Grid Network on YouTube. We're on the air every Thursday. Saturday, Grid Live pre-race. Myself, Jessica, will be previewing the MotoGP and Formula One race this upcoming weekend. And then every Wednesday, Grid Tonight, our weekly motorsports news. We went on the air yesterday. In case you missed it due to YouTube being down yesterday, just click on the Grid Network icon, subscribe, and find yesterday's episode where we talk about who could be the next leader in the NASCAR Cup Series garage. Now, of course, we definitely thank everyone for joining us. In case you missed the very beginning, we did report on the big news of the W Series 2021. They're going to be working with Formula One. Before we go off the air, Daniel, when it comes to Formula One and the W Series, for any new fans not familiar with W Series and somewhat familiar with Formula One, how would you tell them why to watch the W Series?
Oh, that's a great question. Definitely, W Series in just 1 year of racing, they had such a huge following last year. The races were incredibly exciting. Before the start of the season, everyone was a little bit skeptical about that because, is it the right path to pursue? Female drivers should race alongside the male drivers, not separated. Still, there was still these very good questions there were about this series. Actually, I have the privilege of being trackside in their first season of races. And I can totally say that I changed my mind. I was also very skeptical at the beginning. I think W Series is basically a very huge opportunity, first of all, for the female racing drivers, because the most important thing W Series provides them a platform, a free of charge platform to race at the super high level, at Formula 3 level, which is something that not a lot of them could have afforded without the help of W Series. We also saw drivers that were forced to on the sidelines, like let's say Alice Powell. She had raced previously in GP3, like Vicky Piria. They were forced out of these championship because they didn't have the financial support to continue race at that high level. So definitely the W Series has provided them with the platform, with a free platform to race on such a global stage. And this is the most important thing. I think it's important that we can see them, because the younger generation will see that there are female drivers competing, there are female drivers winning races, there are female drivers winning championships. That's the most important thing, to see that, because if you see that, you believe that. This is going to be the most important thing in the future. And of course, once you grow that fan base, and potentially at grassroots levels, there will be more young girls and young drivers starting out in karting. I think the potentially numerical balance will come, and this is the long-term goal for W Series, which of course is a Formula 3 level championship with for all female drivers. Next year they will be racing, as we said previously at the opening of the show, together in 8 races with Formula One. So on such a big platform, with the Formula One broadcasters showing the races all around the globe. Definitely, it's going to be one of the most important series to follow for us next year.
Definitely an important series to follow. And I would agree with you. When I first heard about the W Series being formed, where it was only going to be women, my concern was it should be racing with men. But you bring up a good point. This provides all the women drivers a platform to show their talents, earn the opportunities that they may have been overshadowed when racing in other series. I know this year One of the big things we heard was how Pippa Mann didn't get a sponsor opportunity for the Indianapolis 500. First time in 20 years, no women in the Indy 500, which is mainly called the world's biggest race. A W Series, this allows women, which traditionally have been underrepresented when it comes to racing drivers. We think of male racing drivers. This allows for the women racing, make a name for themselves, show they are capable of racing not just in the W Series, but Formula One potentially, Formula E, IndyCar, NASCAR, and this really opens the door and is overall really great for the sport. Motorsports in general is one of the few sports where men and women can compete with each other. And with the W Series, this is going to make it where I do see more women using the W Series as a launching pad to bigger and better series. For Daniel at Racers, the girls behind the helmet, my name is Joe. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day and enjoy the races this weekend.